Hey, my name is Brent here on Cloudy the Chance of Meeples. Welcome to Ideas, a time where we sit down with the publishers and designers and illustrators in the board gaming hobby and talk about how they got their games from just ideas to the games that we love to play. And today we have actually a fellow Canadian. I didn't actually tell you that, David, but we
right.
have David Diaz, designer of Fossilis. And this is your only current published game, correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
with kids table board gaming.
right on. So thanks for joining me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So I always start these by chatting about how folks got into the hobby
Yeah.
because I think many of us have similar situations. It's like we found a rabbit hole and we fell into that. But sometimes it's not like that. So how did you get into this hobby that we shared? Were board games something that you did growing up?
Yeah, definitely. Board games were definitely a part of my life when I was a kid, like in the late 80s, early 90s. Um, I grew up playing with my mom a lot, like cards and stuff like that. But then I did have, stuff like the original Hero Quest.
Mm-hmm.
I loved Battle Masters, stuff like, Crossfire and the Fireball Island I remember having as a kid. So I love board games. I love card games as a kid. Then probably in my teens and 20s, I kind of, I don't want to say grew out of it, but I lost it kind of. I wasn't like pursuing the hobby. Um, and then, yeah, I think it was around 2012-ish when like Will Wheaton was doing tabletop on YouTube that I just came across it, started watching it again and kind of being exposed again to this like, more hobby games. And I said, oh, I gotta try some of these. And I think it was Ticket to Ride was probably the first one I picked up and played with my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and then it snowballed from there. Um, Eventually, probably around 2016, I thought, oh, you know what? I want to maybe I started having thoughts of like designing. And at the time, I was still, I was working for a visual effects company. That was my day job was animating for like TV and film. But a lot of that's like, getting notes from all the higher ups and the
Mm-hmm.
directors and the producers. And I had been doing that for over a decade already. And it kind of, I needed like an outlet that was my own. I was
Right.
like, I want to, make something creative that I can kind of take ownership of,
Mm-hmm.
that's mine. And yeah, it became design. So I started attending like Proto TO in Toronto,
Okay.
um, which is a prototyping convention, and just kind of to learn like what people do, how people design, how people test it. And yeah, I actually started my first game design was called Primal Ordnance, which I'd love to go back to and do something with. But it was also a dinosaur game, but it was like huge dinosaurs on a map fighting each other with uh secret magnetic like what would I say? Like targets, how to hit and
Mm-hmm.
defend and all that kind of stuff. But it was a big thing, and for my first design, it was a little much. And one day, my wife was like, "Why don't you try something simpler, like a children's game with dinosaurs?" And my son had just happened to preschool, was digging for dinosaur bones that day, and she's like, "He was doing that. Why don't you do a paleontology game?" And then right away, I was like, "Okay." So I gotta thank my wife for the initial idea.
Right on. And we're gonna get into that idea I am
Yeah.
momentarily, but what are you playing these days? I'm
What
curious.
am I
Like,
playing?
what are some of like your favorite games that are hitting the
Well,
table? Whether just you and your wife, or a game group, or you and your kids.
so yeah, so my wife and I play once in a while. We play with my kids, mostly my youngest. My oldest is 17 now, and it's hard to get him to the table.
Mm-hmm.
But we do once in a while. And I have a game group that we get together every few weeks as well, and
Mm-hmm.
obviously at conventions. But yeah, I mean, my favorite all-time game is Role Player.
Okay.
Anytime I can get that to the table, is great. Well, we had some friends over for the weekend that weren't gamers. I think what did we play? I took out oh, what was it? Oh my gosh, why can't I think of it? It's like point salad. Why
Point
can't I
on.
think of it? Point Salad and Century Golem Edition. We played that,
Yep.
which that's one of my favorite like gateway games, and it's probably in my top 10 games of all time. I love that game.
It's actually in my
Uh,
top 10 as well, Century.
nice.
Do you have
Yeah,
all three of them?
I do. I haven't. I've played the first one a ton. The second one I've played. We've combined the first two,
Mhm.
and I have yet to play the third one, and then I combine them all.
I've done I've combined first and second, and then I jumped and I think I did all of them.
Oh,
First,
nice.
first, second, and third. And I'm just looking at them. It's just fascinating how they
Yeah,
all work together, and yet they have the same core, not mechanic, but the same
right.
core baseline. You're just getting gems and trading those gems for other gems. But
Yeah,
then one's hand management, one's the
yeah.
middle one is will be pick
Like,
up and deliver, and then third
yeah,
one is worker placement, which is my
that's right.
favorite game mechanic is worker
I
placement.
love worker placement as well.
And I
Yeah.
kind of just realized that just a couple years ago that like I'm looking at the games that I like, and obviously the games behind me, not all of them are worker placement, but I just come back to it again and again. I love worker placement. I love
Uh,
games that just you have whatever a few workers, obviously most of the time, and you have to decide where's the
yeah,
best place to put them in. So yeah, I love Sentry.
yeah.
Absolutely fantastic design.
Yeah, for worker placement, what's recent? I played Raiders of the North Sea a while
Okay.
back. I hadn't played that. I loved that one. I just
Mm-hmm.
loved how you get something for taking away and placing. I thought that was really novel.
I
Um,
haven't, to be honest, I haven't played any of the like the Garfield games.
it's the only one I played, but I loved it. That's probably. And then what's the Viking one? Um, gosh, my mind is mush tonight. Uh, there's the Viking one that where you're fighting monsters and moving around the map as well.
A
Um,
Garfield game,
no, no, no. Geez, I'm gonna have to look it up.
not like Blood Rage.
No, it's not Blood Rage. Let's see. I know it's gonna. I'm gonna kill kick myself when I finally see it. Champions of Midgard. There
Oh
it is.
right, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. Jeez. So I only got like 4 hours of sleep last night. So
no problem. So let's move. Let's move back to Fossilis. You obviously said your wife kind of gave you the idea.
yeah.
Are you obviously you're a fan of dinosaurs? I would imagine you said you had another design that was all about dinosaurs. Like, is that like a big passion for you? Like,
When I was a kid, I was a dinosaur fanatic. I just read books. Loved obviously. I read Jurassic Park like in fifth grade in like 2 days, I think. And
I
then
think that's one
obviously,
of my. I think that's my favorite movie.
oh yeah, it's up there for me. I think it's third or fourth for me. But yeah, I obviously saw that when I was like 12. And that was a big reason I got into animation
Okay.
was that and the re-release of the original Star Wars films. Seeing all the behind the scenes of how they redid the effects and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that and Jurassic Park, I have to thank for my my path in life
All right. Yeah.
for
Like
sure.
there's oh yeah, I can't wait. My kids are a little young for Jurassic Park, but
Yeah,
when they get older, I'm
it's awesome.
excited to
It's
sit
so good.
down with them because
Yeah,
I know them, and I know if I show them the scene with the T-Rex and the kids in the car, like they won't sleep for days.
no, yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah. I think
I
I think I
I
waited till my son was like 8, maybe 9. Yeah,
and so but let's dive into this, dig into this. Sorry
sure.
for the bad pun.
That's good pun.
Um
Yeah, I like it.
what did the game look like originally? So for those that haven't played Fossilis, you have this dig site. It's this big plastic tray with 25, I believe, 5 by 5, 5 by
Yeah, it's 5 by 5. Yeah.
5 by 5 of
Originally, it
these.
was 6 by 6.
Okay, so you shrunk it a little bit.
Yeah,
You have this board with all these hollowed out areas where bones go in there, and then you stack these tiles, and then you're digging up dinosaur bones. So
yeah.
I'm assuming the original prototype or anything like that didn't look that refined and
No. So I actually,
like
so like I
like
said, when my wife gave me the idea, the your brain starts working, and the idea of pushing things around to uncover them came right away.
mm-hmm,
Um, those little puzzles too that you like
mm-hmm.
you
Slider
have to
puzzles.
like slider puzzles, yeah. that popped into my mind, and I was like, can I do this with cardboard? And I went and grabbed some like tiles. I'm like, no, they're too frictiony.
Hmm.
I'm half Cuban, and growing up, all the uncles and grandfathers and fathers would always play dominoes all the time.
Mm.
And I
Mm.
just remember, dominoes sliding, you're mixing them up on the table. And I was like, oh, I wonder if I could do that. And I ended up finding on Amazon some game that came with square dominoes. So I
Okay.
ordered like a bunch of those, and I built the board, kind of the dig site, out of Lego. Um, and they happened to be a good size that matched the dominoes. And yeah, so that was the initial prototype. And that stayed like that. The tiles on the board have obviously stayed since the very first prototype, which is great. Because that was like my initial um yeah, thought.
Hmm.
And I'm glad it worked. But yeah, the rest of the game, like around that central board, uh, yeah, definitely changed a lot since the original. Obviously, I'd said like my wife first said that design a kids game, so I was thinking originally that yeah, it would be for little like younger kids.
Hmm.
So the main like mechanic, I guess, was cards. Um,
Okay.
so there's three different types of tiles. If people don't know, there's sand, clay, and stone.
Hmm.
And originally, you just people had hand of cards, and it had a tool on it. So like a brush for sand, a spade for clay, and a chisel for stone. And so then you would play a card with a number on it, and you'd have to move that type, that number of spaces. So again, it was different, like yeah. So yeah, kids could learn numbers and colors
Mm.
and things like that. So yeah, it was definitely a different game from the beginning. But again, there was still that core mechanic of discovery, which
Hmm.
is kind of where we built everything out of. Like we want that excitement of people moving the space and seeing what they want to get and getting that fossil out. Um, and there was always a bit of a memory involved in that too, because you can be uncovering and covering things back up. So there was
Hmm.
a little bit of that as well. Um, so yeah, that was the kind of the initial design.
It definitely has that like fun toy factor,
Hmm.
and you kind of noted like that discovery because anytime you open up a new dig site, or I don't know what you call it, like you slide you unearth something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
There's
like
different like holes, right? Different
everybody's
chambers.
like kind of looking like, oh, what's in there? You
Exactly.
know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, what are you gonna do? And then you got to make the decision, which dinosaurs you're gonna take and whatnot. And I just got it for my birthday a few weeks back, and trying to get it to the table more because I love worker placement. This is worker placement. And I love dinosaurs, and it's just that cool, like kind of toy factor
Yeah.
where you get to build loosely. You get to loosely build dinosaurs, right?
Right.
Um, did you always have like the events and like what did it look like kind of before Kids Table Board Games kind of took over? Did you have the tools, the upgrades, the set collection, all those
I
things?
had I had uh I had the set collection.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to remember like the early versions. I did not have the market. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we were keeping tiles. So in the game, each tile has different icons on it. There's three
Mm-hmm.
different icons: footprints, amber, and what's the other one? The,
Eggs.
the eggs. Yes, thank you. Because I had other ones too.
Okay.
At one point too, we had coprolites, which is fossilized dinosaur poo,
Okay.
which I was kind of upset when I got rid of that. I was like, that's a fun one. Kids like poop. And it's scientific coprolites. Anyway, the you weren't keeping them. So in the game, anything you knock off the site, you keep, and then you can spend those icons in the market for supplies and stuff. So yeah, that
Mm-hmm.
was not. I don't think that was part of it in the
Okay.
beginning. But actually, there was a set collection of those tiles. So instead of spending them, you were keeping them and trying
Mm.
to collect sets of those for points. I'm pretty sure that was at some point. It was like that early on.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but whatever, like I said, when Kids Table saw it, um, I had met Helena previously at Prototio, and we had talked casually, and uh, and then I saw her again at Breakout in Toronto, and um, and I said, hey, I'm working on this Dinosaur Kids game, and she said, oh, I'd love to see it, next time we
Hmm.
see you, which was the following Prototio, and yeah, her and Josh played it, and they loved it, and then the next day they brought their kids, and they played it with me and her, and I thought that was the real test to see
Mm.
if the kids would enjoy it, and they loved it. Yeah, she's like, they never play games for this long. We played it for like an hour,
Wow.
but yeah, and then they signed it shortly after, which was awesome.
So, what would you say your biggest challenge? I actually don't actually ask this, but I just thought of it earlier today. Well, what was your biggest challenge or hurdle? Like, did you get to the point where you're like, everything seems like spot on, but there's just something that's missing? Like, did you,
100%.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
can you think of something
Oh,
specific? It's like,
I know
oh
it,
man.
there's a specific moment. We spent, we worked on it a bit, while I was at home and with them as well. And then I remember I went over to their house one day to have like an all day kind of design session where we'd work out some kinks and we had changed, we had added like a rondelle at some point because I think it was a lot about like how are people doing things like we didn't want the cards, we wanted something else. So then we tried a rondelle thing, and that didn't really work. And then we got onto like, oh well, what about like points? Like everyone has action points,
Mm,
and we liked that. But what we kept testing it, and what we were missing was just player interaction. Like there wasn't a lot of because there were no meeples on the board.
mm,
Like you were spending and deciding what to move on your own.
mhm,
Um, and yeah, we were just trying to crack that. And I think I had actually left, like we had spent all day there. We were kind of like, all right, we'll come back to this. Not even like 10, 15 minutes. Uh, and I think they called me and like, we got it, we got it. We'll put meeples on the board. And that was like a light bulb moment. So
mm,
then, yeah, we worked on that and just not, and then depending on where your, meeple is, your little paleontologist, that's what gives you access to, the adjacent pieces around you to dig.
mhm. I feel it's a little bit educational as well because it has kind of flavor text on all those dinos.
Sure.
Did you
Yeah.
do all that investigation yourself?
Yeah, I did a lot of that myself, because the one thing like for balancing it, obviously with the set collect, once we added the set collection on the cards themselves, so each dinosaur has three different sets it can be in.
Hmm.
One is like the type of dinosaur, so we had biped, quadruped, avian, and aquatic. Then we also had what they eat, so whether they're a herbivore or a carnivore, and the age they existed in, so Jurassic, Cretaceous, or Triassic. Um, and I had to make sure there was kind of an even amount of them. So I had to do a lot
Mm,
of research
hmm.
to find, the appropriate, number of dinosaurs for each kind of, that would cover
Era.
enough of the eras, enough of the types, the herbivores and carnivores, so they were even, and then, each of the four different types as well. So I know obviously there were specific dinosaurs I wanted to make sure were in the game too.
Which ones? Out of curiosity, I just looked through them again today. I'm not even going to try to announce most of them because I'm just going to look absolutely foolish. But there's no raptors in there.
So I
It-
purposefully
okay,
because
so why not? Like they're like
because my favorite dinosaur is called Deinonychus,
okay,
and Deinonychus was a raptor, and they say now that it had feathers and stuff, but
okay,
that dinosaur is what Michael Crichton and the people that made Jurassic Park modeled the velociraptors from, because the
okay.
actual velociraptors were the size of turkeys, so they weren't. Yeah, yeah, there
Really?
were bigger raptors. I know one called the Utah Raptor was huge.
Okay.
The Utah Raptor was probably like 10 meters long or something. Like they were big, like the
Hmm.
Velociraptors in Jurassic Park. but actual velociraptors were small. So they Deinonychus was kind of like what they made them look like without the feathers.
Hmm.
So
Now,
actually, I think it was in the sixth one, the last in Dominion, they had like a feathered kind of raptor. And when I first saw that, I was like, are they finally putting my favorite dinosaur? But they gave it some weird, like the ghost raptor or something. Or I don't know what they called it. They called it some weird raptor thing. I was like, come on. But anyway, that one I had to, yeah, that one I had to put in there. And then obviously all the more popular ones too, like T-Rex, Triceratops,
Ankylosaurus is my favorite.
Ankylosaurus is a great one. He's in there.
Personally, I know,
He,
I went through it and I was like,
nice.
I can't say half these names. So I'm never gonna attempt. But it's really cool how you took that the extra step, I guess, per se, and you did you know that balancing of like, oh, these dinosaurs from the different
Yeah.
eras and stuff like that. And it's just those small little things that I think sometimes go unnoticed that
Hmm.
I'm a little like crazy about, like attention to detail and things like that. Just like the small nods that I personally really like. Um, and someone actually said in my game group, one of my game groups, like, you see details pretty good. And I'm like, oh, I guess so. But
It's good.
really cool that you added that. So you mentioned that you have ideas for other games and stuff like that. Are you still designing, or what's keeping you busy these days?
Yeah, what's keeping me busy is my Mesa Game Lab. Is
Okay.
so be through Fossilis, right?
Mm-hmm.
When the kids table put it on Kickstarter. So I obviously I offered to do the video, but they had actually hired someone already. So I said, well, you know what? I'll make you some animated GIFs for free. I wanted to contribute something to the Kickstarter page.
Yep.
So I did some cool little animations like on how to play. And yeah, from there, I guess some other people saw it and started asking me to do them, and then I said, oh, maybe I can. And the COVID had just started as well,
Okay.
so I was working from home already, and we were stuck at home. I thought, you know what, maybe I can, I've got some extra time. Let me see if I can make this like a little side gig. Um, and yeah, it grew and it grew. About my second year, I pretty much had two full-time jobs. I was working for a VFX studio during the day at home, and then in the evening I'd work on videos and gifs and stuff. But yeah, towards the kind of the middle of that, I told I was burning out, so I told my wife I got to quit one,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, it just so happened the studio I was working for kind of made it an easy decision for me, and I quit. And yeah, and I've been doing this full time for over 2 years now, full time, and yeah, it keeps me extremely busy. There's like so many people, asking for videos and gifs and renders, and I've been doing some how to plays as well recently, and it's been great. I love it. Mixing kind of your passion of a hobby with my kind of career that I
Mm-hmm.
was passionate about as well has been awesome and super rewarding. But unfortunately, it has taken away kind of that free time I had that I use to design.
Mm-hmm. Do you
So
think you will design again?
if yeah, I'd love to. Again, I've dabbled in some of the stuff that prototypes I've had. Um, but yeah, I haven't I need to find that time to like sit with them again, reacquaint myself with what I was doing,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of go from there. Because obviously, I mean, I've been playing way more games, right, too, in the past few years.
Right.
Because
Uh,
it's already been 5 years since I designed Fossilis.
wow.
Seems
So
crazy.
yeah, that, that is crazy. Like, not for you. Like, I'm saying, because you're talking about like COVID times, and like
Yeah,
next February is like 5 years since all
yeah,
that went down. So it's like,
I know.
wow,
Yeah,
wow, life's progressed quite a bit since then. So with Mesa, is it Mesa Game Labs or
yeah. You
Mesa
said
Labs?
Mesa. Yeah,
So you
Mesa
make
Game
like,
Lab. Yeah,
Game Lab, sorry.
yeah.
So you make like Kickstarter videos and stuff like that. So like, what games are you excited about? Like, so you make these videos.
Hmm.
As you're making these videos, I'm assuming you probably don't know a ton about these games, but like, surely
I
you
mean,
know something
I
about them. So like, what games
yeah,
are you excited
yeah,
about because you've helped create content for?
yeah. Because obviously, I get kind of an early look at a lot of these games, um, obviously, they're still working on them as I'm
Mhm.
making them. Some usually at least I mean, for what I do, I need the artwork to be mostly done
Right.
so I can show it off. So that's usually there. But yeah, I definitely, hear about stuff early, and I do try and learn as much about the game as I can. I think coming I'm not just like some marketing person making these trailers that doesn't understand gaming. I
Mm.
think that helps a lot that I'm a gamer and a designer. So
Mhm.
I'll always ask for the rules and do my best to read through them and learn them, not front to back, but enough that when I'm making the video, I'm making it all make sense, right? I'm making sure and then as a fan of crowdfunded games anyway, myself as well, I try and think of like what would I want to see, what excites me about the game, where's the fun as a designer, right? We focus on where's the fun in the game and make everything point back to that. So that's why I try to do it to videos as well.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I've done some really, really great ones, the last few months. I think probably one of the most popular ones was Galactic Cruise.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, that did extremely well for Kinson Key on Kickstarter, and that one I was lucky enough to. I don't always get to play them beforehand, but I actually met them like almost 2 years before, and I play tested it a few times online, and then once at was it Origins? Yeah, I think it was at Origins. Got to play it in person, so
Mhm.
that really helped. Familiarize me with the game and get excited. Yeah, there's I did a really cool one last year for Time Strike, which was like a terrain building
Okay.
thing that I think is, probably coming out. I'm waiting on one. I think it's shipping now called Weirdwood Manor
Okay.
that I
Yeah.
loved. It had that like kind of spinning board
Yeah.
that looked really cool. Yeah, so yeah, I love when I'm taking on these projects, I love seeing you know, unique gameplay and components
Mhm.
and try and then I always try and make them look as cool as possible, obviously in the videos.
Right. So since you designed a game that went on Kickstarter, do you find yourself backing more games as a result because you went through that and so you know kind of the journey that those designers have gone through and that excitement that they have seeing their project come to life? Do you feel that you back more games now than you did in prior to designing, if you backed at all?
No, no, I definitely, yeah, before designing I had backed a few. um Yeah, I just think just being in the hobby more and just the prevalence of Kickstarter games and how good they've become. And especially obviously, with like the deluxeification that publishers can do on that platform with their games that, might not be able to sell like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm always a sucker for good art
Mm-hmm.
and good components. Um and yeah. So yeah, I don't know if I do it more or less, but I definitely the longer I've done this, the more I feel like I can give kind of feedback to the publishers on
Mm-hmm.
more than just the video,
Right.
like just kind of the overall, like, here's what you should do in general to be successful on Kickstarter. Um, yeah, because I've done videos for projects that, I had the feeling might not, you know, be successful for
Right.
one reason or another. It
Mm-hmm.
might be they didn't spend enough on the art, or they didn't, I'm just hearing about it like 2 months before they're launching and they want a video, and I'm like, "Ah, I should have heard about this by now." Like, and
A
so you're
year
not,
ago.
yeah, you're not reaching enough people,
Yeah.
and yeah, so I try and give as much of that advice to clients when I see that,
Mm-hmm.
and I always tell them number one, number one, number one, get that audience. Spend as long as you have to. If you need to push it back, push it back. No one's gonna care. It might
Mm-hmm.
sound harsh,
Mm-hmm.
but like the people that do care are gonna wait for it, and the people that don't know about it, they don't know about it. So
Mm-hmm.
spend that time, get more people to know about it, because you need that day one audience to back it
Mm-hmm.
these days in order to be successful.
Yeah. Okay. Final question. You said you're a sucker for art. Who are like what are some of your favorite games from an art standpoint, or like y- games that your favorite art is in?
Yeah,
If that makes
I
sense.
think one of my absolute favorites is Title Blades.
Okay.
Mr. Cuddington
Yeah.
did the art for that, and I love their style.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, they have so many games, but Idle Blades, the art just speaks to me. One of my other favorite artists is Conchai Maria. I love his style.
He did like
Um,
Kabuto Sumo, that?
yeah, he did
Yep.
Kabuto Sumo,
Okay.
and yeah, yeah, he did the Spill,
Mm.
and I think of any others I might have. Did he do Hall of the Mountain King? Maybe not. But yeah, yeah, I love his stuff too,
Mm.
and yeah, and Ian also did the Galactic Cruise stuff. His
Okay.
stuff is great.
Okay.
And yeah, Andrew Bosley, he's an amazing artist too. So
Yeah.
yeah, all those people come to mind.
Right on. Well, as we wrap up here, thanks so much for taking the time. If someone wants to know more about kind of your design work or also kind of like all your Kickstarter videos and animations and whatnot, we talked about Mesa Game Lab a little bit.
Yeah,
Where can they see that?
yeah.
On
So I'm Mesa Game Lab on Instagram. I have a Facebook page, or just David Diaz on Facebook, and our website is mesagamelab.com. And yeah, yeah, we'll have all the information there.
Perfect. I'll
For,
post a
for
link to that to your website in the description of
I
this
appreciate
video.
that.
No
Thank you.
problem. You know what? I truly believe that community is built on conversation, just like games are built on ideas. And so that's why I started this whole, I guess it's a podcast now, but it's not really a podcast, but a series just to chat about how ideas become just not just ideas, just like just games and
Yeah,
how
because
you
that's where
flesh
it all
them out.
starts.
Yeah, exactly. Because
Yeah,
you can ask my wife. I have tons of ideas, and
I
she's
know.
like, "Can you stop? I've heard them all." I'm like, "No, you haven't. I got a whole
Yeah,
bunch more
that's what I
rolling
mean.
around in
I
here."
have I have a huge list on my phone of like game ideas that just pop into my head, and I write them down, and then they're there, but they don't become anything until you actually sit down and work on it, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I just want to once again say thanks so much for taking the time there, David. This has been absolutely fantastic. It's flown by. And so if you want to know more about David and his work, Mesa Game Lab, link to his website in the description of this video. And so yeah,
Thanks, Brent.
until no problem. Until next time, grab your umbrella. The forecast is cloudy with a chance of meeples.